So good evening, everyone. My name is Robin. I will be leading this evening. Welcome to Zen Buddhism at the Dharma Temple. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about myself. Why am I sitting in this seat? And talk a little bit from this book, Zen Beginner's Mind, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about Zen in particular. So my journey into Buddhism started back in the 80s when I was working as a nurse in a refugee camp in Thailand. And there were 10 of us who lived in a house in a small town. And right across the street was a Thai Buddhist temple. And every morning I heard the monks chanting, and they came walking through the streets with their begging bowls. And there was something mystical, magical, something about it that drew me in right away. I studied meditation, and I started a meditation practice back then. Now, I'm going to tell you how long ago that was, and it's probably longer ago than some of you are old. It was 1981, okay? So I did that, and I did my work in the camp, and then I came back to the States. So what do you do after you've worked as a nurse at a refugee camp in Thailand? It's just kind of hard to go back to the hospital, right? So I did a little bit of traveling. I was living in Minneapolis at the time, and on one of my walks, you know how sometimes the universe will just place you in the right place at the right time. I happened to walk by Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. It's like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be here. I walked in there. It was a traditional Soto Zen temple, full of all the things that some people love about Zen and some people hate about Zen. It was all the traditions, the bowing, the incense, the percussion instruments, the chanting in Japanese, the beautiful statues, lots of ritual and deep, quiet, what I called sacred silence. Meditation in Zen, and what I think sets it a little bit apart from perhaps other types of meditation, is the stillness and the silence. Not just quiet, silence. And I found that for me, that was very helpful for me to be able to focus, see what my mind was about, and to start a practice. So I practiced there for many years. I ended up moving to San Diego because I wanted to study under another Zen teacher whose name was Joko Beck, who has since passed on. And I studied at that center for many years, and I still do go there. So that's my history, and that's why I think I know a little bit about Zen. A little bit. You're always a student, right? So that's why I call myself a Zen student. I also wanted to reference this book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I've mentioned it. Suzuki Roshi on the back. If you're interested in learning about Zen in particular, about Zen meditation, it's a wonderful book. It comes from his talks that he gave over the years. He founded the San Francisco Zen Center. Very plain and clear and simple language, easy to understand. That's the other thing that sometimes people have maybe an issue with Zen is like, oh, it's so complicated. What are they even talking about? This is a little bit that way. It's a little bit of a puzzle. But it's doable. It's doable, and it's practice. So I'm going to just first start by reading this about a paragraph. Then what I'll do in kind of Zen tradition is I'll ring this bell 3 times to start the meditation. We'll sit for about 20 minutes or so, and then I'll ring the bell twice when we're finished. The recommendation in Zen is that you sit upright. Whether you're sitting in a chair or on a cushion, straight spine, sitting as straight as you can, you're kind of giving your body the idea that something different is about to happen. It's not just, I'm just hanging out in a chair, I'm just hanging out on a cushion. It's like, I'm here to do something, I'm here to meditate. So that will give you that idea. Eyes. Some people like to meditate with their eyes open. Some people like to meditate with their eyes closed. Traditionally, in Zen, a lot of times you'll hear partially open. So you're cutting out a lot of the sights around you, but not everything. You're still in your life, but eyes partially open. So you pick what works for you. I have found when I try sitting with my eyes closed, I get into like a dreamy state. I either fall asleep or I'm just like daydreaming, and I realize I spent a 20-minute meditation daydreaming. So that's a story on that. Okay, so to read from Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Zen mind is one of those enigmatic phrases used by Zen teachers to throw you back upon yourself, to make you go beyond the words themselves and begin wondering, I know what my own mind is, you tell yourself, but what is Zen mind? And then, but do I really know what my own mind is? Is it what I'm doing now? Is it what I'm thinking now? And if you should then try to sit physically still for a while, to see if you can discover just what your mind is, to see if you can locate it, then you have begun the practice of Zen. Then you have begun to realize the unrestricted mind. everybody made it through, nobody ran out. Awesome. Very nice still sitting, guys. Look like Zen students. Two things that I neglected to mention, and I apologize for, is what do you do with your hands while you're sitting? They could be left. Some people like to do, what I've seen a few of you doing is holding your hands this way. It's called the cosmic mudra. There's nothing magical about it. It's just a way to place your hands to keep yourself still. The main thing is just don't fidget if you can help it, okay? It helps to keep your mind focused. And then the other thing is, what do you do with your mind when the bell rings? You could get into just daydreaming, planning what you're gonna do later, what happened today, or you could do something else. So I know some of you are meditators, and I wanted to ask you, what do you do with your mind when the bell rings and you're in meditation? What is your technique? How do you meditate? Who wants to be great? I see you smiling. That's it.
What is my technique when I meditate? Well, the first thing, I place my attention on my breath.
Okay.
Either the sensation of my breath going in and out of my nose, or the sensation of my breath in my belly, rising up and rising down. And whenever my attention starts to focus on thoughts, I simply return my attention back to the sensation of my breath.
Very good. So for those who may not have heard, and for those who are joining us virtually, this gentleman said that he focuses on the sensation of his breath, either coming in and out of his nose, or in his belly or his chest, follows the breath. When he notices thoughts coming, he simply returns to the breath. Do you say anything to yourself, like back to the breath, or come back? Do you have anything that you say, or you just go back?
Some like today,
Yeah.
It was thinking, and so just anytime that sort of inner prompt would come, I would just return the attention back to the breath.
Very good. Great. Who else? Does anybody do the same thing or different? Yes.
Well, I was going to ask you, I don't know how this fits into the Zen thing, but I do a mantra that I learned in yoga, where it's Ham Sa. It was reading what it means, like mind that. But the meaning isn't really that important, but it's just the focus on the, and it kind of follows the breath.
Right.
And I had a teacher one time tell me it's like a ball and a dog, where you want to give your mind, like using a mantra gives your mind just enough to engage the mind a little bit, kind of like a dog full like a ball.
Right.
This works especially if I wake up in the middle of the night and I want to go back to sleep. But I use it in meditation. And I don't know if the Zen tradition has a mantra, if they use mantras.
Not in the Zen that I've studied, but again, it's a focus. So that's the thing. You want to have something to focus on other than just your random thoughts, because you could just have a daydream session, and then the bell rings and you're like, oh, what was I doing? Was I meditating? So yeah, so this gentleman said he follows a mantra. So yeah, that's great. What about anybody else? Same, different? Yes.
When the bell rings, I try to follow the waves of sound
The waves of sound.
until they dissipate, and that brings me back.
So this gentleman focuses on the waves of sound when he hears the bell. So then what happens after that? Are you then doing something else?
When the waves dissipate, it's a kind of signal to come back.
Come back. Okay, great. Take one more. Anybody else want to jump in? Yes.
So I appreciate all of the above. I incorporate those, and then when I find myself in a thought, the way I learned is after becoming aware of the thought, I imagine it floating down a stream until it's gone, and then I'm back with the breath or with the sound or breathing in and out to a mantra. But when the thought comes, sometimes I find it easier to watch it slowly float away rather than like abruptly stopping myself or saying, hey.
Knock it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So you incorporate a few different things, and that's great. I had a teacher one time who taught thought labeling, which is, so a thought comes up, you can notice the thought, but then label it. judging thought or whatever kind of thought. And I didn't particularly care for that because I felt like I was adding thinking to thinking. So I stopped doing that. But a lot of people really like that. And that can be a way that you can see what your mind is up to. Because if you're having judging thoughts or whatever kind of thoughts when you're on the cushion or you're meditating, you know you're doing it when you're out there too. So, and that, again, is what meditation is about, to see what our minds are up to. What are we up to? It's self-reflection without like trying to analyze anything. It's just like, oh, there was a thought, there was a judgment. Can I just come back? So what I've said to myself over the years is come back. I'll just say come back. Not harshly, not in a judgy way, but just like come back. So I find that to be very helpful. Okay. So how did it feel to sit for that amount of time? That's okay? Okay. If you want to wiggle a little bit now before the next sitting, that would be good. It's just always good to be just kind of like still while we're meditating. So we keep our mind on what we're doing as opposed to changing positions. So I'm going to read another little bit from Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind before we go on. The innocence of the first inquiry, just asking what you are, is beginner's mind. Not who am I, but what am I? The mind of the beginner is needed throughout Zen practice. It is the open mind, the attitude that includes both doubt and possibility, the ability to see things always as fresh and new. It is needed in all aspects of life. It's needed in all aspects of life. Beginner's mind is the practice of Zen mind. So don't assume you know anything, just be a beginner. That's the point of that. Okay, so we're gonna sit again. 20 minutes, you all got 20 minutes in you? Okay. Get all comfortable, hold your hands however you want to have them. Be sitting however you're gonna sit, and see if you can commit to that posture if possible. If you have to move, of course move. comments, questions? Who felt the second sitting was different than the first, and how so? Easier, harder?
I seem to be a little bit more relaxed on the second setting.
Okay, more relaxed physically?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. It is much easier to just focus on my breath. I do very little wandering.
so both physically and mentally you felt more calm, possibly present?
Yes.
Okay. Who else had that experience, or maybe a different one? Yes.
Yeah, I also had that experience of the second sitting being, it was easier to be here. Yeah, it was easier to be here.
Easier to be here. So did you find, why do you think that was? What was going on for you that made it easier to be here?
There was less momentum thought. The first sitting was like kind of a river, trying to hold back a river of thought.
Right.
The second sitting was more of a trickle. Thought here, thought there. But yes, it felt very, my attention just felt more available, just here.
Attention is more here. Right. And just to say too, that there are a number of different forms of meditation. Zen is one of them. Zen is one of those meditations where you can just be really quiet and still, and some people get very uncomfortable with that and prefer a more guided experience. Some people feel more fidgety with each subsequent sitting. My personal experience, of course, having done this for a lot of years, is my mind tends to settle down with each subsequent sitting. It's calmer and quieter, not always, but often. But sometimes physically, I used to sit on a cushion, and now I don't. I sit in a chair, and that was a big thing for me to be like, okay, can I still be a Zen practitioner on a chair? And yes, you can be, But even if you're sitting in a chair, you can feel like, oh man, my back is hurting, my hips are hurting, something's hurting. And then how do you relate to that? Who's had experiences with physical pain while they're sitting, and who could share how they relate to it? Anybody want to say? Yes, Anne.
I wouldn't say it's pain, I would say it's discomfort.
Discomfort, okay.
And it has to do with both sitting in a chair and sitting like this. Sitting on his back. And one of the things I do is just sort of breathe through it. And know that it's part of the practice, because what I'm experiencing is the fact that, my back muscles are working. My back muscle is working. That doesn't always happen for many, many years. I haven't meditated seriously for a couple of months, regularly. Excuse me. And I also believe that I've experienced as well is that I'm part of what my focus is making it feeling like there's a string pulling me up in the back. And so that my back is straight, and I feel myself sometimes, I don't know, but then I just gently pull myself back up, and that becomes sort of part of what I attend to, let's say, in my practice.
So appreciation for even the discomfort of uncomfortable back. My back is working. Not everybody's back works. Not everyone can take a breath, so you can have gratitude for some of those things. And the visualization of feeling like you're being pulled from the top of the head, that's excellent. Yeah. Other techniques I've heard teachers have said, let's say you feel a pain in your hip. So you could be like, oh, my hips hurt. Oh, poor me. Oh, you have a whole story of like, why is this still happening to me? And you go on and on. Stop, right? Gently stop that. And perhaps just bring the attention to your pain. Now that sounds like that could be the worst thing ever. Like, do I really want to focus on this pain? I would prefer to just turn away and ignore it. And that's another thing that you can notice about yourself. What you're doing while you're meditating is probably what you're doing when you're not meditating. Something's uncomfortable, I'm out of here. I certainly had that experience. Has anybody else had that experience? Yeah. So, okay, so let's say my hip is really hurting, it's really bothering me. I can focus my attention on it and really examine it. Like, without having a whole thought story going on, but what is the pain like? Is it sharp? Is it prickly? Is it dull? Does it have color? What can I learn about this pain? Can I, and this is gonna sound weird, but I had a teacher who would say, can I be friends with this pain? Right, who wants to be friends with pain? But you have it, you could be friends with it, right? Another question that I have had a teacher advise me is, can I see this as my path? So let's say, for example, you have chronic pain. Like, for example, I have arthritis in a lot of my joints, and it's been a process. And so my teacher has said to me, can you see this as your path? So it is my path. Maybe I don't want this path. What is the path that I have? So how can I be at peace with it? Like you said, can I have gratitude? You know, I have a sensation in my shoulder. My shoulder isn't paralyzed. I can feel something, you know. And the transience, everything comes and goes, nothing lasts forever, right? Impermanence. That pain's not gonna always be there. It wasn't always there, and it's not always going to be there. It might, but we don't know. What do we know? Nothing for sure. Nothing for sure. So those are some techniques. So what about mentally? Anybody have a harder time mentally with the second sitting? Were you like wondering like, God, when is she gonna ring that bell? Because I certainly had that experience. Like, why is this taking so long? I see a few heads nodding. Yeah, it's okay. That was your experience, right? So maybe if you're going to be thought labeling, it could be impatience, you know, intolerance, whatever it is. And oh, do I do that when I'm not meditating too? Sure. So who we are when we're meditating is who we are when we're not meditating. So meditation, again, is a wonderful opportunity to see what the heck is going on. Okay. More comments or questions? Anything from anybody online? We do have a chat box. Feel free to chat question or comment. Anything else anybody wants to say? Okay. I'm going to read a little bit more from this wonderful little book, just a very little bit. So the way of practice, and when he talks about practice, it's meditation practice, and it is a practice. You're not going to be instantly like successful. There's no goal here. It's just practice. But the way of practice is just to be concentrated on your breathing. And we've all talked about focusing on the breathing. Many of you have. On just a little sideline, some people, when I first learned to meditate, I learned to count the breath. Breathing in, 1. Breathing in, 2, like that. And then when you get to 10, then you start over. You notice you have a thought, you start over again, okay? I asked a teacher here recently in San Diego, do you count the breath? And he said, oh no, don't count the breath, breathe the count. You notice the difference? 1. 2. It's more the experience of the breathing than the thinking about the breathing. So that's just a little thought that I thought was kind of cool. All right, but the way of practice is just to be concentrated on your breathing with the right posture and with great pure effort. This is how we practice Zen. And it can be how we practice any meditation. So again, when you're sitting to meditate, whether you're sitting in a chair, sitting on a cushion, lying down, however it is, go into it knowing you're doing something other than just sitting down, gonna have a little conversation with yourself. So maybe sit up a little bit straighter and think about how you're gonna commit to that posture. You're not gonna just wiggle around and it's like that, it's not meditation. So just think of it that way. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, it can be half an hour, it can be several hours. Has anybody here ever done the half day sitting for Saturday? How was that experience for you?
It was very long.
Very long,
Yeah.
okay.
The hardest part is when we got up and did the walking meditation.
Yeah,
I was hoping that would be a little bit longer, because I thought that would be a nice little break from so
great,
much sitting, but
great.
that was the quickest one.
Yeah, so it felt really long.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a comment about that? Anyone ever done like longer retreats than, how about you? Tell me about that.
I actually moved here from Minnesota, so I was a part of Common Ground in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay, I know Common Grounds, yeah.
And I think 2 or 3 times I went on their 5-day retreats. And every time was different. So the first time I noticed a lot of anger, and then the second time, there wasn't as much anger. And I think until I came back to the city, I noticed how irritating all the stimulation was from 5 days of no phone,
Right,
just out in the countryside,
right,
very routine, very lots of
right.
sitting and yeah, I appreciate it. It was probably one of the best times of my life, really. The most challenging at times.
Yeah, well, welcome to this practice here. Yeah, a lot of value can be obtained from long sitting, more than a day even, and that maybe sounds awful. And if you think half a day is long, try like 3 whole days, you know. But there's a lot to be gained, and the long retreats that I've done, I've noticed when retreat is over, people aren't so like just ready to start chatting so much, but you notice the colors of things and things taste, you're more present. So just a thought, maybe to check it out. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
And then before you head out, our Dharma Bum host, Vicki, has a couple of announcements, I think.
I do. Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Vicki. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, pastors, or teachers. We are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice